Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome today to our UN75 dialogue, addressing the impact of COVID-19 on people of determination in the UAE and building resilience for the future. I want to thank you for joining us today. And before we start with the actual session, I just want to explain some logistics to make sure that everyone has access to the discussion today. We have, as you can see, sign language interpretation. This will be available throughout the presentations today. Also, there is Arabic translation if you prefer to listen to Arabic language translation. And there's the icon at the bottom of your screen where it says interpretation. So it gives you interpretation on that channel. So thank you again for the interpreters who will be helping us today. So as we start and people are signing up, this gives me an opportunity to welcome our guests today to our discussion. And thank you very much first to everyone and to our guests. And we have with us today Mr. Abdullah Al-Humaydan, General Secretary of the Zayed Higher Organization for People of Determination. And we also have with us speakers Noura Al-Blouki and Muhammad Al-Adairis. You have to tell me how to pronounce it correctly. And Fatma Al-Jassim. I am the United Nations Resident Coordinator here in the UAE. My name is Dina Assaf, and I will also be moderating the session today. So we'll first start off with some opening remarks from Sayyid Abdullah. So I'd like to give you the floor for your opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good morning. It's my honor to welcome you all today to the UN75 dialogue. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Dina Assaf, the United Nations Resident Coordinator for the United Arab Emirates, for inviting us to join this special event, and to our brothers and sisters of determination who's joining us here today on this monumental occasion. On behalf of Zayed Higher Organization for People of Determination and the United Arab Emirates, I would like also to congratulate the United Nations on its 75th anniversary, marking 75 years of incredible dedication to making the world a better place. Although Zayed Higher Organization does not have such a long history, by comparison, we have spared no effort in working towards the realization of our vision and mission relating to people of determination, not only as an organization, but as a nation. Our achievement in this field have made possible thanks to the invaluable support of our leadership. His Highness Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the President of the United Arab Emirates, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, and the Deputy Supreme Commander of the UAE Armed Forces, and Sheikh Khalid bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the Chairman of the Board of Directors of Zayed Higher Organization for People of Determination. Zayed Higher Organization was established in 2004 to serve as an umbrella entity in the consolidation and unification of all efforts in the provision of care and support services for people of determination through the capital Abu Dhabi. Today, the organization provides specialized services to almost 2,000 people of determination across all disability classification. Zayed Higher Organization provides a wide range of specialized services at our 18 facilities, starting with assessment and diagnosis, early intervention, education, vocational training, therapeutic rehabilitation services, psychological support, family counseling, and finally, sports activities. The organization prides itself on its continual strive for improvement and sustainable in key areas relating to empowerment of people of determination, particularly inclusive employment through the organization initiatives and projects, such as our Be the Change campaign, which was announced in late 2019. The organization has taken strides in increasing the national employment rates for people of determination by establishing partnership with major entities in the Emirate. The organization actively contributed to an increased availability of equal opportunities employment. Our comprehensive vocational training services, coupled with sheltered employment opportunities alongside employers such as Al Fahim and Al Masoud Tailoring, has seen a major shift towards inclusivity. The inclusion of people of determination not only promotes their empowerment, but their independency and community participation, engaging them in the development and decision-making processes of the nation altogether, of which today's debate is a key example. It is somewhat fitting that 2020 marks the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, while simultaneously marking a time in our history where humanity itself needs unity more than ever. In the face of an unprecedented challenges, to emerge not only as the victor over COVID-19, but as a connected globally community, where we are reestablishing ourselves amid the aftermath of this pandemic in a way that promotes solidarity. It is for this reason that we are gathered here today, asking our people of determination to guide us in this processes, to share with us their experience during this pandemic, where we can learn from our brothers and sisters of determination. Today is the day where we unite and work together to create a more determined tomorrow. In conclusion, I would like to thank and appreciate the organizers, speakers, interpreters, and all the participants who's attending this special event. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for these wise words and helping us to understand the situation here in the UAE and the support that is being provided to people of determination here in the UAE. This is an important aspect of addressing the response to COVID. So thank you very much for your efforts and the work that you do. And I'd like to then, as the United Nations resident coordinator, I'll put on my other hat, just to say a few words before we start the panel discussion. And I want to remind everyone that last week, December 3rd, was the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. So we're very pleased to host this event as a timely commemoration of this International Day, which helps the world to pay attention to the priorities and importance of people with disabilities, but as we say here in the UAE, and which is a very good terminology to say people with determination. And I think maybe the world can follow in the UAE's footsteps in that regard. So as we've also already said, the UN is marking its 75th anniversary of the UN. And we therefore, across the world, have taken the opportunity to have conversations globally on the priorities for the future and the obstacles to achieving them and addressing the obstacles of achieving them, as well as the role of each country together and internationally to make progress. The UN75 dialogues also provide an opportunity for all of us to reflect, rethink, and hold discussions that engage all peoples on how to navigate the gap between the future we need and where we are headed. The COVID-19 pandemic has unfortunately deepened pre-existing inequalities and obstacles, including for people of determination. And as I've already noted, I'd like to acknowledge and recognize the UAE's efforts, as well as those of the Zayed Higher Organization for People of Determination, in supporting people of determination in various aspects of life here in the UAE, especially during this challenging time. There are more than 1 billion people with some form of disability in the world, accounting for 15% of the world's population. As the UN Secretary General remarked on his International Day of Persons with Disabilities message, he said, "Promoting inclusion for persons with disabilities means recognizing and protecting their rights. We must ensure that the aspiration and rights of persons with disabilities are included and accounted for in all inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID-19 world." Inclusivity for the UN is key. And this is a part of the process that we undergo to ensure all people are included in all aspects of the work that we do. And since I mentioned the rights of persons with disabilities or people of determination, I also remind you that this week on the 10th of December is the International Day for Human Rights. So that also is applicable to our session today. So in the UN, we talk about building back better. And I say building back better means better for everyone. So today, we're going to have a discussion together with colleagues who are working and are leaders in their own right in various areas in supporting people of determination, and also to hear from them their perspectives that will help and enlighten all of us on these areas. Now, I want to give a reminder for those who have joined while I was speaking that we have Arabic translation for those of you who may want to listen to the discussion in Arabic. It's an interpretation channel. And as you can see, we also have sign language interpretation. And we are reminded through these forms of interpretation that this is also a form of inclusivity and ensuring people have access to information, because there's different ways that as human beings we access information. And we're going to be hearing more about that in a moment. So before we start, we have a short video that we would like to show you. It's just a minute or two. Soraya, who's supporting me in managing our session today. Soraya, could you turn on our video?
Yes, Dina, 1 second.
While I'm waiting for Soraya to turn on the video, as we know, technology is great that we have this technology, but there's always can be challenges. Here it comes. But if you have questions also, please put them in the Q&A area so that at the end of the discussion, we're going to be also drawing from the questions that you put forward. So just a reminder that we have a Q&A area as well. Go ahead, Soraya. So Soraya, I probably should have read the last part. Can you go back to the article? Just to the, there you go. So this video was created by the Office of Human Rights for the United Nations. And within the human rights articles of the United Nations, one says, states have to eliminate obstacles to accessibility for persons with disabilities. This is Article 9. So in case you didn't know, the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities has this article as part of the human rights work that we follow as the United Nations. So this is why we put this video as a reminder that the rights of persons of determination fit within the overall scope of human rights. So as we move on now to our panel discussion, our first speaker, Noura Al-Blouki, who will introduce herself and the work that she does. We have, of course, since we're talking about COVID-19, we know that to address issues related to COVID-19, we must be able to respond and reflect to multiple forms of discrimination that are faced by people of determination, including, as I just mentioned, accessing information. So Noura, I'd like to give you the floor. Perhaps you can introduce yourself, and can you tell us about the work that you're doing in creating accessible content for people of determination, and why you find that important?
Hi, Dina. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Noura, and I'm a journalist at Abu Dhabi Media. And COVID-19 had a drastic impact on people of determination, where we've seen deadly discrimination rise up in different parts of the world, which impacted their education, their employment, and the health services that they have received. However, thankfully, unfortunately, in the UAE, alhamdulillah, thanks to our great leadership, His Highness Sheikh Khalifa and His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, God bless them, the impacts of COVID have been minimal and not detrimental, as education continued remotely, work continued remotely, and for those who had to be in offices, they got tested every 14 days to ensure that we stay safe and we adhere to the highest precautionary measures, and that we would avoid spreading or contracting COVID-19. And I remember, as we worked through the media reading news around the world, I remember people in different parts of the world were left out, or let's say if there was something as being marginalized and put on the side when they had a lack of test kits, and not in the UAE. I remember in April 12, on that day, Sheikh Mohammed announced in a tweet that the national home testing program to provide adequate healthcare and preventative screening for people of determination, where they wouldn't have to go to test centers. And even if you had to go to a test center, you would be tested in your car. You are not allowed to enter the tent because the tent poses risks for you. And all of these stories, I thought they were so important to be shown in videos and shared with different parts of the world, that hoping that other countries could learn and apply. And in terms of accessible content, a lot of people don't have adequate access to information. And when we think about creating accessible content, what is accessible content, people may ask. Mm-hmm. It is content that is accessible to people of all abilities and not just people of determination. Of course, when we create it, we have people of determination in mind, but ultimately it benefits everyone. So you could be learning a new language, you could be in a noisy place, you could be commuting, and you could benefit from accessible videos that you watch. So what is accessible content? If you had images, it is very important to include alternative text which describe the image in it. And if you have videos, it is very important to add subtitles, captions, or audio descriptions of what is going on in the video. That way we can make sure different people have access to the video. And if it was an image, alternative text provide people with visual impairments the chance to learn about what's going on, because they rely on screen readers to get information. And my work focuses on creating accessible content. And when we look at accessible content, thankfully we have produced a lot of accessible content. Of course, when COVID hit us, we had to work remotely, and creating content remotely was very hard, but not impossible. So we had to connect with parents and teach parents how to use the online platform, how to take a photo, a video. And I think that benefited parents more, and parents also are now more aware of how to create content in some form. So it might have been a small obstacle, but in the end, it created an opportunity for parents to learn also on how to create content, how to shoot a video, landscape, portrait, and what goes on in creating. However, in creating a content, there's more than just to having subtitles and having, for example, captions. There's the visual aspect of a video. You want what you present matching what is being said, and you want it to be inclusive. You want the images portrayed to be correct. And all of that goes into creating an accessible video.
That's excellent. And you mentioned the alternative text, and it's interesting because you know, I use Twitter. So if any of you would like to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter. And I noticed on Twitter they had the alternative text, and at first I didn't know what it was, and so I started to put a description. I looked it up. I started to put a description on all of the pictures I would put in Twitter, the alternative text. So let me ask you some advice. Do you advise that we keep the description very short, or should we go into more detail? What kind of, I mean, for someone like myself who isn't trained, how do I make sure that I'm doing it the right way, that it would be useful to people? What, do you have any advice?
Yes, so in terms of social media capabilities, on Twitter, you can enable alternative description for images. On Instagram, you can use unlimited captions for images. Facebook also uses face recognition, which is, I think, incredible. And YouTube also, they have automatic captions on videos, but you can also add captions from yourself. So going back to what you said, in terms of alternate text descriptions, so you have to describe what the image is about. So if, for example, it should be clear, concise, helpful, and you should use simplified language and just describe the image. It doesn't have to be so deep, but generally. So those who use screen readers can get a general idea of what is being presented in the image.
I remember, Noura, when I first met you, and it was a delight when we first had our first conversation, and you were telling me about content that you were also working on because of COVID response. Could you share with the audience, what would that mean? We were talking about, you know, you remember some different ideas that you had and things you were doing, you know, that in the COVID situation. And I remember with Zayed Abdullah, the Zayed Higher Organization was creating videos with sign language to explain, you know, the COVID guidelines and information that was happening at that time in March and April, etc. But you also were working on some things. Can you share?
Yes, definitely. At Abu Dhabi Media, when they were launching awareness campaigns and creating video for the mass, general mass, they made sure that people of determination weren't left out of the conversation. So we created different videos targeting different parts of the disability community. So we did videos for people with physical disabilities on how to regularly keep your wheelchair clean, how to sanitize your wheelchair, because of the risks that would pose if you would actually go out of your home and in, because not everyone has the means to stay at home at all times. And with people who use sign language, they would always touch their face, and they touch different things also. So how would we make sure that they stay safe while using their hands? Because within the deaf culture, it's not within the etiquette to wear gloves or paint your hands. So what would we do? We did a video targeting people with the hearing impairments and showing them how to stay safe and how to avoid using their hands and touching their faces while signing.
Excellent. So how can people find that information?
We'll be sharing it after a few minutes, inshallah.
Okay,
the
all
video.
right, great, excellent. So we have 2 videos, I think, to show everyone of some of your work,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
So should we move to that now?
definitely.
Okay, so
Thank
Suraya, can you show the 2 videos? And maybe after we show the 2 videos, if you want to explain anything, we can do that. You know, if you want to point out anything. Suraya, over to you. Reminder to everyone also that there's Arabic translation if you're joining us now. You can go to the interpretation section. Suraya?
1 second, please.
Okay, just want to check. So these videos we're going to see, Noura, are examples of the work that you've done and the kinds of things that
Yes.
you want to show as an example to those who are listening, correct?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
خلونا نتعاون لوقاية أنفسنا
وحماية مجتمعنا. كل واحد فينا له دور يقوم به في هذه الأيام.
ودورنا هو أن نحافظ على سلامتنا حتى لا ننقل العدوى.
الجميع مسؤول عن الجميع.
So that's the first video, and then we have a second one. And so while there he goes. Okay, here. Excellent. Thank you so much. So Noura, do you have anything you would like to share with anyone on your experience in creating these videos or any other advice?
Yes, I would love to advise like content creators to look into what accessible content is and try to be more inclusive in creating their content and try to it's a learning process, you know. The more you develop content, the more you learn, the more you search, and try to be more inclusive, because every content you create could affect someone's life. All it takes is one simple content, or no matter what it is, and that content could ultimately change someone's lives or inspire someone to move forward. And we have a responsibility to make sure that the content that we create is inclusive to everyone. And thank you, Dina.
Thank you very much. Very wise words, and I'm sure many people will benefit from this statement. And also just to tell everyone, and I'll remind at the end, is that this video is being recorded and will be on the United Nations UAE YouTube channel. So it can also be viewed again or even shared with other people who weren't able to attend it today. So your message will go even further than today. So that's important. So thank you, Noura. And at the end, when we come to the Q&A, we may come back to you for some answers. And I'm going to move on now to our next subject, because of course this topic that we're discussing today is wide and there's many issues. And even in a webinar, you know, you can only hit a few of the items, but we wanted to try to address some of the more important issues that we thought would be interesting to those who are listening and that you could learn from. And in addition to content, we also need to look at accessibility in our society. And so we talk about in the United Nations an inclusive society. And I told you that in the UN, inclusivity is key. In the Sustainable Development Goals, and if you don't know about the Sustainable Development Goals, you can look that up online. These are the global goals that the whole world is working on. And you may have heard SDGs, which is Sustainable Development Goals. These goals also include within them various premises. One is leave no one behind, meaning everyone needs to be addressed in every country, and not some people, some places, so everyone. So as we build an inclusive society, and especially taking into consideration people of determination to ensure their equal access to facilities and services, we're going to hear today from our colleague Mohammed Al-Aidarous, who will share with us his viewpoints. And I'd like to ask you, Mohammed, can you share with us, you know, what particular areas of work that you're doing to address an accessible workplace? And what would you like to share with our listeners on what does it mean when we talk about an accessible workplace or accessibility for to work for people of determination? Over to you, Mohammed.
First of all, thank you very much for this exceptional opportunity. I would like to thank our attendants, our panelists, and people who hear us today.
And introduce yourself, Mohammed.
Yeah, my name is Mohammed Abdurrahman Al-Aidarous. I work at Expo 2020 Dubai as Associate Sustainability Pavilion. So first of all, I'm gonna speak about my journey to Expo and how I saw that Expo 2020 is an incredible and accessible and inclusive workplace. So I actually started with Expo as a volunteer for so many years, and I attend with them many opportunities that they did in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. So after that, I heard that they have a training program for people of determination, which is under the Ministry of Community and Development, because I was registered in the employment platform for the Ministry of Community and Development. So then I had the 3-month training program at Expo 2020. At the end, Alhamdulillah, today I work at full-time employment at Expo 2020 Dubai. All of people of determination, before they go to their works, they ask themselves about if the workplace are accessible. About myself, I saw that Expo 2020 is inclusive and accessible. And what do I mean by that? I mean that the employees, they are already knows how to welcome people of determination, how to treat people of determination, how to deal with people of determination. And if we have a physical disability, we already provide for them a ramp, which is for the wheelchair. And if we have someone with visually impaired, we have people who can speak to them and with very easy language, because as you know, visual impaired, they can't see. Also, if we have hearing disability, we have some employees who can speak sign language. So when I saw that, I said, this is what we want to do for other workplace in the society. And they must learn from Expo 2020 and how Expo is a best practice for other entities and governments and private sector to learn from Expo how to be inclusive in the workplace. Even though the employees are always smiling in front of people of determination, and there is no discrimination actually. So one of the things that I really glad, which is I always, when I go to work, I smile and the people around me smiling. They always care and ask about me if I need any help during the work or anything else. So this is what I mean by inclusivity. You put people of determination and you treat them normally without any discrimination. So I'm very glad, and I actually welcome all the listeners who are with us today to come to Expo 2020, inshallah, on the 1st of October 2021. And we will promise you to provide an accessible mega event at Expo 2020 to welcome our beautiful guests, people of determination.
Inshallah, ya Muhammad.
Yeah.
So Muhammad, to ask you just as a follow-on to what we were discussed earlier, you know, you spoke about the accessibility and the things that you learned at Expo. How do you think that would apply in a normal, let's say, business? What do you see as things that the listeners can learn from about what you've learned about the importance of workplace accessibility? Is there some advice that you would give to a business owner?
Actually, I encourage all of the people who listen today. We might ask ourselves, what after COVID-19? So as you know, COVID-19 affects all of us, and it's not easy. But we are so glad today we live in United Arab Emirates, and our great and exceptional leadership that always strive to empower people of determination in the society and in the workplace. So I encourage entities and governments and private sector and businesses to first take a first step, which is making inclusive programs that employ people of determination. What do I mean by that? Like, you make several programs that at the end lead to recruit people of determination. But these programs must be accessible and inclusive and has a clear vision for people of determination. This program could be around 3 to 9 months after a person with disability or person of determination. They got tested during these months and then they might recruit them. But I encourage governments and entities to not judge person of determination from outside. Like, I can't say, oh, this person is disability or he have physical disability, maybe he can't work. No, give them a chance to explore themselves, to empower themselves. We need today to make people of determination to be independent, to be more powerful. And actually, they are not disabled. They are able to give back to community or to the country. So we need today to give them that chance and empower them and show the world that today United Arab Emirates can be inclusive and a place that believe in person with determination and could be in the future, inshallah, best practice for other countries around the world.
I think those are very wise words, Muhammad. And I think the important thing you said is that all are abled. And we need to make sure that we don't discriminate against people for any reason. And if someone has a physical challenge, all of us have different challenges. We should not hold that against them and give them the same chance as we would give any other person, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is a very good message. And we live now in a time and age that we are very lucky to be in, because technology provides us with tools that we didn't have in the past. You know, since most of our work, or many of us, not everyone, uses a computer for their work, we can use computers to our advantage for those who have problems with sight or even hearing, etc. There are tools that are available now that can facilitate this, and businesses can include these as part of their work packages. So there's lots of tools, right, Muhammad, that people can use.
Yes,
And you mentioned the ramp, etc., for wheelchairs and whatever other issues there might be, right? Yeah.
Yes, we have now so many programs that actually accessible. If you have visual disability, we can make interpreters, a description. If we have sign language, we can provide someone who speaks sign language. So it's so easy. I feel about myself today. I work from home actually. So it's very to be grateful, and how today our workplace are accessible and inclusive.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Muhammad. So we actually have a video now that was done by the Zayed Higher Organization for People of Determination on workplace accessibility. So we're going to watch this video again, another short video, and then I'll come back to you, Muhammad, if you have any comments about the video. So over to you, Suraya.
A chapter opens in our story, a start in our lives.
Recent figures showing that less than 10% of people of determination are actually employed in the workforce show that we really have so much more work to do in breaking down barriers.
At the end of the day, they want to learn as much as you learn.
I was overwhelmed with their work ethics, intelligence, commitment.
أنا أنصح من إخواني وزملائي إنهم يشوفون شركات يستفيدون منها.
على يقين أن أصحاب الهمم لديهم كثير من الإمكانيات والطاقات التي ممكن أن يقدمونها لتنمية مجتمع دولة الإمارات.
وقمنا طبعا اليوم بدورات كثيرة مع الفنادق، اليوم نتكلم عن الشركات الخاصة مثل CNN، فنطلب منهم الدعم انهم يتشاركون معنا في هاي المبادرة ويكونون جزء من هذا التغيير، واحنا حاضرين لدعمهم وايضا اطلاعهم على هاي الخطوات حتى ان ناخذ اكبر عدد من اصحاب الهمم ونقدر ان شاء الله يتم توظيفهم.
We really have so much more work to do in ensuring that everybody gets an equal chance to have an opportunity in life.
That was excellent. Muhammad, any final comments or advice at this point?
I would like extremely delighted and to be grateful to Zayed Higher Organization, because I graduate from Zayed Higher Organization, and I would like to thank their exceptional effort to empower people of determination. And one of the great things that they achieve, which is be the change. So initiative. We need initiatives like Be the Change to spread to the whole Abu Dhabi and the United Arab Emirates in the future. So thank you so much for them, and I wish them all the best. And we are always strive, and we're gonna give our best to serve our community, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you very much, Muhammad. And I'm going to move now to our next panelist. And as we've been discussing so far, and it's been a very rich discussion, we've heard of a variety of topics of the importance of inclusivity and access in different ways. And of course, I mentioned in my opening remarks that from the United Nations point of view, we use the term building back better, especially after COVID-19. But this means that it's for everyone. So the lessons of this pandemic have told us that this also applies to policymaking in all sectors. So it's not just in one sector: employment, health, education, etc. So policymaking becomes really important. So now we'd like to hear from our friend Fatma Al-Jassim. And I want to, Fatma, just like the other panelists, I'd like you to introduce yourself, but also then could you tell us from your experience as you're working on issues related to policy, what lessons have we learned from this COVID experience? And what would need to be taken into consideration, or what are some of the important things to take into consideration by policymakers? Over to you, Fatma.
Good morning, Dr. Dina, how are you? I'd like to first of all introduce myself. My name is Fatma Al-Jassim. I'm currently a graduate student, and I'm also working as a disability empowerment and disability rights consultant with various entities across the region and on an international basis. So I would like to start by thanking you, Dr. Dina, and the UN, the United Nations in the UAE, and the Zayed Higher Organization for giving us this great platform to voice our views. Before sharing my thoughts, I'd like to raise a question for the audience to think about. How did you feel in the midst of the pandemic? Did you feel isolated, excluded? Did you feel lonely? Well, disabled people are always exposed to some degree of those feelings and those emotions. In the UAE, however, we're lucky to have leadership that values the human element, a leadership that caters for the entire spectrum of human needs and abilities. The true leadership of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Crown Prince of the Emirate of Abu Dhabi and Deputy Supreme Commander of the United Arab Emirates Armed Forces, is the embodiment and the testament of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals motto of leaving no one behind. Because truly, the UAE left no one behind during this pandemic. In addressing your question, I'd like to point few lessons that, in my humble opinion, we should consider in building back the world post the pandemic, because the world as we know it won't be the same pre the pandemic and post the pandemic. So from my experience, here are some of the tips that I can share for governments and organizations from the private sector to the civil society organizations that I think that are helpful. First of all, I think one of the things that we need to cater for is moving from a centralized government to a decentralized government. Meaning, for example, often we can see that for example, a segment like People of Determination is a responsibility of, let's say, a ministry or a specific entity in a country. I think post-COVID, what we need is we need all entities to work together and to work in an interdisciplinary approach to disability, meaning it's not just one entity that caters for people with determination or the one entity that vouches for inclusion. It's the responsibility of all sectors within the government. I'll also advise them to create an autonomous heterogeneous group, for example, to work together and advise on let's say to create an inclusive policy. Let's take for example the strategy that was released, the Abu Dhabi strategy that was released for people with determination recently in the pandemic. What we need is that we need to make sure that civil society is included as advisors and the voice of people with determination is heard, and that we need to include all sectors in an autonomy sort of evaluatory and assessment point of view, so they can give a kind of a third perspective or a third eye to any policy that you work on. The third point, and for me this is the most important point currently concerning digital accessibility, is because our life suddenly shifted to be virtually. Everything is done virtually, and I'd like to advise all entities, companies, private sector to focus on digital accessibility further and further, because before the pandemic, people always focused on physical accessibility, meaning are the buildings ready, and how to prepare from that point of view. But moving on, I think there is a lot of emphasis that needs to be done, and there's a lot of improvement that needs to be done in the area of digital accessibility. For example, enforcing a law, for example, or a regulation, fostering software fourth point is data. So how can we collect data and use the data we collected today to sort of predict and better prepare for the further and further. If we realize the data we collected today from what we learned from the pandemic and created an holistic database about disability, for example, that will allow us to predict and forecast the future of disabled people or people of determination in any country. I'll also want to mention the one initiative which focuses on education that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum announced recently. The Prime His Highness tweeted about a digital school that's gonna be launched soon in the UAE that caters for the Middle East region and beyond. I think this initiative is great and incredible. It focuses on providing access to education to people who were not able to access education, for example, were displaced or refugees, or even people of determination who are not who, because of their health issues, they're not able to attend a mainstream school. And I think this is incredible because what COVID has done is that it's shifted our minds incredibly around the way education works, especially with online education. We know that COVID has been the effect of COVID, the impact of COVID has been drastic in terms of people who passed away, in terms of the pressure that has on the health sector and so on, and in the on the economy, for example, in the worldwide. But I think what it has done in the employment sector and education sector, opening our eyes about the importance of remote working and e-learning, for example, is a great asset. And my last point for you today is the importance of goal number 17, which is creating partnerships. Goal number 17 is the last goal that in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And the number one lesson I think we all have been taught by COVID is the importance of staying together, working together for a better future. And this is the main takeaway from my personal point of view.
Thank you, Fatma. Thank you, Fatma. I had my microphone on mute. Thank you so much for your recommendations and advice. Also, as the United Nations, we listen to you closely, as well as to your colleagues in looking at recommendations that we want to also ensure we follow on here in the UAE. So this advice is very well taken, and I'm sure our listeners have found what you've said not just enlightening, but inspiring. It's important that we realize that, as you've said, that to actually actualize some of the ideas that we've discussed today, or other ideas, policies do have to be put in place, laws have to be put in place, and regulations, and there has to be enforcement on that to ensure that all people are having access and have accessibility and are included. So you gave some very specific ideas on areas that can be further enhanced. And this is across the world. As I said, this video also will be listened to people in other countries, so all can learn from this advice. This is very, very helpful. Thank you. And so what I would like to do now, since we're coming towards the end of our discussion, is I want to give us the opportunity to hear from a few of questions that came in. But before I do that, as I did with the others, I want to ask Fatma, do you have any final words of advice to our listeners overall?
My final words of advice would be the importance of having an open mindset and the importance of being adaptable and flexible. Yes, it's true that we need to prepare for the future, but and work for the future. But it's also important to embrace the current moment, or the current situation, to really understand what can we do further and move forward. I think all in all, globally, what we learn from instances, from situations where this pandemic happened, for example, or any global event, I think that it's the only way to move forward is to have an open mindset, to have an open mind and be flexible in the future.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Fatma. Of course, there's so much more that we can discuss on these topics, and I'm sure now people have gotten to know you. They will reach out to you as well as to Muhammad and Noura for further information or support. And so what I'd like to do now is put one last video so I can give also our translators a few-minute break, but a short video that speaks about the COVID-19 and things that we need to know in dealing with COVID-19 if you have a disability. So Soraya, if you could put up that video, and while that video is playing, it's only a minute or so, I have a few questions in the Q&A area. If you have any questions you would like to post, please do so. وبالنسبة للناس اللي بفضلوا انهم يكتبوا بالعربي، ممكن تكتبوا بالعربي في الQ&A لاني انا ممكن اقراها بالعربي واترجمها بالانجليزي. فاذا حدا حابب يكتب بالعربي ما في اشكال. So please go ahead, Soraya, with that video, and I'll be Soraya, can you turn off the sound? Yes, and start over. Okay, because I want to read it because it's not for those who can't see. I can actually read the video for them, and we don't need the music. So let's because it's only music. So please, you can play it now, Soraya. So it's the International Day for Persons with Disabilities, 3 December. Oops. 5 things you should know. Okay, I missed going a little fast. Risk of getting COVID-19. Persons with disabilities often lack access to clean water and sanitation. They rely on physical contact for assistance and oftentimes cannot access public health information. Number 2, severe COVID-19 symptoms are likely higher rates of underlying conditions and difficult access to healthcare equal higher risk of COVID-19 for people with disabilities. And they live in institutions, and therefore this can increase the risks of COVID-19. And older persons with disabilities are often residents of care homes. And where COVID-19 death rates range from 19% to even 72% in some cases. And there's discrimination. It says discrimination is rampant, which means it's often. When it comes to rationing scarce resources such as ventilators and beds, persons with disabilities are often the last in line. And the fifth issue, that the broader COVID-19 crisis hits harder. So despite a surge in work remotely, people with disabilities are at a higher risk of losing their jobs. And losing access to education as well. They're also at higher risk at losing support services. And they are at a higher risk for increased violence. As I mentioned, over 1 billion people are suffering disproportionately from the COVID-19 crisis, not because of their disability, but because of discrimination, ignorance, and neglect. And we spoke about that today. The 3rd of December is the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Raise your voice and demand that we recover better for all. I believe that's the end of the video. Okay, there you go. And this was summary. We put it at the end because it's so engaging. Perhaps you can indicate in the chat area of the webinar how people can get in touch with you if they want to follow up or get to know you more. And let me ask first, Sayyid Abdullah, if I may, there's a few questions here. I'll do my best to summarize a few that maybe you can help clarify. There's questions around the education and training. Can you hear me, Abdullah?
Yes.
Yeah. So let me just tell you a few of the questions, and maybe you can answer them together because they're around the same topic. There's a question that asks about programs that exist to promote educational advancements for people of determination to get higher education, such as a master's or PhD, when they also are concerned about the costs. There's also questions also related to what type of training exists for people in the workplace to be able to better engage people of determination. And let me see, there was another one similar in that area. Here's one also, is there's any programs here in the UAE to support people of determination in the workplace to get further development, professional development, and to get promoted. So these are things I think around the workplace and around their education and what type of support programs exist for the people of determination, but also for maybe the employers in workplaces, et cetera, or to better understand how to engage and support people of determination. Perhaps you could give some insight on this.
Yeah, now, thanks again for this question. As you mentioned, this is related to two different topics. Now, I will just start with the work placement, as we have set up some development programs just as internship with ending with unemployment. So we called it, as we started, and maybe with the Be the Change campaign, we have announced the program called Fursati. It's for the people of disability in UAE that can have a chance with engagement as with our strategic partnership employers to start on a 6-month internship as a development and training on job. Looking forward, as part of the 6 months, we we continuous on development and focus on training, how we can meet the job requirement skill to be able that the POD, the paper of determination, get the job at the end. So this is an existing program that we have it. It's in Zayed and in Abu Dhabi, and it's implemented. So we have a lot of success stories of, alhamdulillah, unemployed PODs through this program as a starting of internship ending with employment. Now, in regards of continuous of education, where we said postgraduate programs, I would really ask if Fatma Jassim is one of the of our UAE nationals who actually been in terms of this program. And I think the program, Fatma, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm mistaken, that the program of continuous education for people of disability or people of determination Emirati is equal to any Emirati. They can get into the programs of continue postgraduate certificate or majors with the cost of the programs of scholarship. And I think you're in the master, you've completed your master degree, right, Fatma?
I'm in the process of continuing my master's. I didn't finish yet, but yes. So all of the educational opportunities in the UAE and abroad are equally accessed for people of determination. So regardless of if you have disability or not, if you match the criteria, you can apply and go from there. And a lot of universities in the UAE, and whether it's government or private, actually encourage people with determination to apply and provide them even with full or partial scholarships. And this is applicable for Emirati nationals, but I've known people who live in the UAE who are non-Emiratis who actually got scholarships too. It depends on what area you're looking at, but there are opportunities that are available.
So we do have specific entities who are responsible for setting up those scholarship programs in the UAE.
Yes, we do. There are federal level, like the Ministry of Education, and there are also local levels in the Emirate, in each Emirate.
Excellent. So I guess if people want more information and they don't know where to go, they can contact the Zayed Organization, Higher Organization, for more information to help direct them, correct?
Right.
Yeah, excellent. We have here also questions related to support to people of autism as well. And are there programs related to that type of support?
So is this a question?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Okay, yeah. So the question was related to support to people with autism and other developmental conditions to also help them with their needs. Is there support that they can also find?
Yes. Now in Zayed we have two main centers for autism disorder. Abu Dhabi in Al Ain, and also we do have Mohammed bin Rashid Center in Abu Dhabi and Karam school. This is all Department of Education. As a government, 4 main centers as a public centers, and we do have private sectors, well designed and educated centers in Abu Dhabi for autism.
Excellent. So this is also very important information to the group. The final question I'll give you, Sayyid Abdullah, is also related to any training or support that is provided to people to know how to deal with people of determination during an emergency. Are things like that happening here in the UAE?
Yeah, yes. Now we have different type of, as we mentioned, comes with the family development and family counseling. We do have different types of training. So once even we try to develop and train parents how to deal with their people of determination, kids or children, and also with the society themselves. And finally, now we're just developing a content with Abu Dhabi Police Department that how we can enlarge or teach parents and BODs how to deal in terms of emergency and crisis. So this is a program that will be announced also on our social media very soon, inshallah.
So very much it's important that people follow your social media to get this information. And I can see in the chat also an organization is indicating that they support autism as well. So there's various support available across the UAE, and I think it's important for people to connect, and this video will also help people to know where to go to find this information and support. So thank you very much, Sayyid Abdullah, for this intervention. And as we're coming to the close, I'll just try to address another question or two, and one was for Noura. Noura, there was great appreciation for what you had to say around accessibility to content. And one question related to the alt text and the issues that we have for social media, how do you see this applying to the challenges of e-learning or addressing e-learning? How does it get implemented for e-learning? And especially now that we're doing, currently at least, our education online. Do you see a way for that to be addressed? You're on mute.
Sorry. Yes, I think it is very applicable. During the COVID pandemic, we at the company had to have some courses taken through the website Coursera. And Coursera also provided captioning, transcripts, and videos through e-learning, which we took some courses for a few months. And I think that if a student of determination was studying through e-learning, I think that having captions, subtitles, and transcripts are very applicable in the websites. It's just a matter of how to create the website and how to make the website accessible and how to plug in accessible content.
Okay, excellent, very good. So this is possible for us to also integrate accessibility in the digital learning environment, from what you're saying.
Yes, definitely.
Definitely. And Fatma, there was a question also for you related to what can people do in the meantime? They very much, again, appreciated your intervention. And it indicates here that there's a disability strategy in Abu Dhabi. And so there's acknowledgement of that, and that it takes time for things to, get into place. So what recommendations do you have for families in the meantime as the law is being integrated into society? I'm sure you must be familiar probably with this strategy.
Yes, I am. Well, from my experience, one advice that I will share with parents and families is the power of knowledge. If you are equipped with knowledge about your rights, your child's rights, either on a local or a federal or even an international standpoint. And the second the second advice is to understand that inclusion is always a journey. It's not a destination. So there will be bumps along the way, but it's important to give your child or your daughter or your son the space to be independent, and the space to be who they are, and believe in them, because trust me, if my mom especially did not push me and believe in me and tell me that I needed to voice myself, I needed to be an advocate for others, to pave the way for them, I wouldn't be the person I am today. So my first advice would be believe in your child's capabilities, and equip them with knowledge so they can maneuver this world.
Excellent. I love that statement that applies to all children, right, of the world. Believe in your child and help them to achieve what they can, find their potential and help them to achieve that potential. I think that's very good advice. Oh, I'm hearing some interesting noise on there. Okay, very good. So as we round up here, I am Muhammad. Are you still with us online?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. So as a final question, and for colleagues, if we didn't get to your question, we'll make sure to share all your questions with the Zayed Higher Organization for their information. And I would strongly encourage you, if you have follow-up questions, to contact them through their email and website, as they can support you as needed. But I'll ask Muhammad, as we're talking about accessibility, one of the questions was related to training of employers to know how to deal with people of determination. What advice would you give for a training program that should be developed for employers? Is there any advice you would have as to what that should contain?
Yes. So in these days, we need to provide some certified, let's say, consultancy and trained people to give them first a knowledge and information about person of determination. So then, if they got certified, they go to the entities and government and private sector to train the employees there. So this is my advice, is to have a certified consultancy or a certified, let's say, company that knows information about person of determination and how to deal with them, and then they can move to train other companies and to be more accessible and inclusive for a better future for person of determination.
Excellent. That's an excellent advice, because you're saying that the information is there, the expertise is out there, and you can get the right expertise to support you.
Like something, and they can get these certified or information from person of determination itself.
That's
so
true.
Also another advice is to have a position that, like, you are a manager, so give someone an associate under you and who is a person of determination, so you can learn from him, and you are as a manager that will get this information and direct person of determination and get his feedback and recommendation and consideration. So if these consultancy have and companies have many person of determination under them, they will really make an impact for a better future for person of determination, because they will get this information from person of determination itself.
That's very good advice. Consult the people that are actually concerned. Get the information from the source and don't make assumptions on your side. That's very good advice.
Yes.
So thank you very much, Muhammad, for that. And I'm going to, unfortunately, I would love us to be able to continue. We'll just have to have other sessions in the future. I want to thank again the panelists. First of all, I would like to thank the Zayed Higher Organization for People of Determination, and specifically Sayyid Abdullah Al-Humaydan, who I really appreciate your support in putting this webinar together. I can see that it has had a lot of interest, and we look forward as the United Nations in continuing to work with you and support the work that you do. And I want to thank Noura, Muhammad, and Fatma for such an engaging and informative discussion.